And we're live. Hello, Ven and Andrew, and welcome to my guest, Enzo Cyrille. So happy to have him here.
Thank you for
And
having me
today, no problem. I love having you here. We have all these fascinating things. So it's almost, but not quite, the anniversary of this photo. See, you so know how to do this better than me, Enzo. And this is the photo that I caught in August last year through my kitchen window. And I was thinking meteor, because I'll be honest, I didn't think, oh, it's a UFO. I was thinking meteor because of the tail on it. Now, if I do this right, I have a short little, whoop, there we go, a short little clip here. And I would see, I mentioned that it was the Perseid showers. Oh, there you go, August. 12th, 13th was the peak. Oh, it is almost the anniversary. I got it on the 4th. Wow. And I put the time. And then this was the video part. So I could see it coming down, and it was just seconds. But Enzo, if you could share, how did you know right from that video that my awesome meteor was not?
Well, for one, because I'm an astronomy nerd, and plus I was in the Air Force for 24 years, so I've seen a lot of aircraft. And my astronomy hobby, I've seen a lot of meteors and things like that. And basically, meteors zip by very quickly. And even if it was really big, where you could see it burning up as it's going through that, it's still probably going to be moving faster than what you videoed. The why it really stood out for you, it was right at sunset and it was off to your west. So as the sun gets lower, it's still shining like up above everything else. Even when it's actually below the horizon for you, it's still shining like up in the air, kind of an idea. From your perspective. And that's actually how you can also see satellites that are in orbit and things like that, is like that hour or so after it sets, where you can see the satellites moving by and things like that. But for your picture, I've seen it myself a few times from having to watch airplanes flying around all over the place. The contrail that it puts out, where, of course, it's as it ingests air to make the engines go, it compresses out at a higher temperature, which means the water that's in the fuel and in the air itself condenses at certain altitudes depending on the weather conditions and creates that contrail. And sometimes it stays up there for a really long time, depending on those thermal layers that it's in. Sometimes they disappear pretty quick. That's what I believed it was, after I looked at it, especially that first picture you showed, where you could almost see where there's two separate ones and they kind of come together. Yeah, that one.
See, in this, I can't point on it, but it was that gap that made me wonder, because there's that gap in there, right?
I don't recall now, since it's been a year, I don't recall the exact aircraft, what type it was, if it had two engines before. But what'll happen is they'll come out as separate contrails, but they'll merge together over time, because of course they're spreading out as well, and they'll spread out into each other basically as it further along it goes. And that's this particular picture was like, yeah, that's probably a plane.
Yeah, and I mean that's what, because you see the lump, and that's why I didn't think plane. I mean, I've been looking at the sky for decades. Never have I seen anything like this, and the colors as well. But like you say, it was late evening, sunset, so the colors, everything were off. But what really got me was because it was that lump, it just looked like it was a flame, right? It didn't, I didn't think that it could be a plane because there was no shape there. And I really wondered what that gap was. I'm like, what is this thing? And then once you explained it, of course, it made, then I started looking at the picture differently because you're right. From perspective, I mean, and this is why, and this will tie in with our other UFO conversation, is I had a photo to show you so you could immediately identify it, right? And I don't think I mentioned at the beginning that you're an experienced sky observer. We said it before I hit going on live. So Enzo is an experienced sky observer. He's a paranormal enthusiast with a focus in or on UFOs. And so I knew you would be able to identify that because you've been looking into this for so long. But that picture also made me think of years before. So things like Roswell and so many other events. When you don't have a photo or a snapshot, which isn't always 100% accurate of what you are physically seeing, but it does make you wonder because it isn't that people aren't being genuine or trying to hoax, but I would have described a big ball of light,
Right.
right? Because I didn't see a plane and my perspective, and I wouldn't have, until you explained it, I wouldn't have noticed that curvature in the photo or the video. So that's what really makes this topic of UFOs such a challenge is, I mean, you've got your hoaxers, sadly, and they're always going to be there, but you have other people who genuinely, like I did with that photo, see something and go, well, what is this? And we don't all have an Enzo to go, could you please tell me? you know? But so Enzo,
Everyone
can
should
we
have an
share?
Enzo. It's to turn to ask questions like that. But it's no. I mean, obviously, it's kind of disappointing when you think it's some amazing cosmic thing happening over your head. You were able to capture it and find out
Yeah.
it's just a plane. But that's still good though, because I've certainly had other people send me things and like, hey, what's that? It's like, yeah, that's a flock of birds. And it's like, no, it isn't, because it was coming from space or whatever it is. They get really tied to what they believe it is, and if you tell them it's
Mm-hmm.
something other than that, then it's an argument. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you, but here's how I came to think it was, a bird or whatever it was. And
Yeah.
I try and walk them through. No, I don't think that's what it is. It's like, all right, you're welcome to that opinion. You asked for mine, I gave it, and you can take it or leave it, because I don't think that's what you captured, though. I wouldn't go to the press saying I got documented evidence of UFO, because they're probably going to tell you the same thing after looking at it.
Well, see, and that's the thing. And again, that's what makes this topic such a challenge, right? And that came up in a few of the books that I read, is people get so invested in what they want it to be that, hello, they get so invested that they won't listen to reason. I mean, I have to admit, when I saw it, and I was thinking meteor, not UFO, and either way, it's a cool picture. It was a cool capture, no matter what, because I've personally never seen anything like that. But the other part to that is, I really appreciated you telling me the truth and explaining to me that you used, and I made notes, Flight Radar 24 to figure it out. And I would rather know the truth and have someone that I can trust and ask than have someone tell me a line of bullshit and go, oh, yeah, that's a great, you caught a UFO or whatever. Like, we need more honest people, and I think there are I think there are a number of genuine people who are trying to get the word out and help make sense of this so that we can get to the truth. And I'm just going to pause there for a minute. And I think we've said hello. Hi, Ven from Books Corner. And we have Andrew. We're good here. How's life in England? The wonders of the human mind, seeing patterns. And there's another thing that comes up. And hello and welcome to Galactic Grifters. And we're caught up on comments. Yay! See, I'm still getting used to, Ven's warm, very warm, as are we here.
It's warm everywhere.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be. But yeah, so I mean, that's the thing is, it's such a challenge now. You go out and do speaking engagements as well as a number of appearances around YouTube. I still wish you had your own channel, man.
Yeah, working on it. That's that after the van, because my plan is to make like an adventure van and actually go to hot spots and do my own kind of research and talk to people out there, and then all that stuff I'll be videoing and recording everything, and that's what the channel will be, is me going out and investigating things. And I kind of almost feel forced to go in that, because we were talking a little bit about analyzing photographs and stuff like that. Is with the explosion with how easy AI is to use nowadays, you almost can't trust any picture or video or anything like that you find anymore, because it can look very impressive with AI. They have to know what they're somebody needs to know what they're doing to make it really, really look good.
Yeah.
To make it look real. But it's still, we're probably several months to a year away from, you're not going to be able to tell from reality to whatever somebody can come up with on their own. And that's why I decided I think it's time I got off my butt and go looking myself, because I'm retired now, so there's nothing keeping me right here. So if I make an adventure van and start putting some gizmos on it, or at least hand carried stuff, I can go check it out for myself and make my own determination.
Cool. Well, and I mean, you have so much to offer. I mean, I always enjoy when I catch you on a live, because it's not just the UFOs. Like, you have such a wealth of knowledge in terms of the asteroids and so many science things, and you explain it so that people like me can understand it and go, oh yeah, okay, there's another thing to factor in, right? Because you're welcome. And I mean, I always love hearing when you're explaining things, because you have the visual part, whether it's showing, the flight radar program or the meteors or whatever you're explaining. You just have such an amazing way of doing it. And like I say, making it accessible to everyone to understand. Hey, Kat, thanks for joining. So yeah, I'm excited to know that you're going to have your own channel, because that's awesome. We need to do a GoFundMe or something and get you that money for the van and the equipment and get you out there. I can't wait.
As it turns out, I have the money for the van. It's just trying to find one that's not like 200 or 300 miles away, that I have to go and find it and test drive it and all that stuff. Now I got to figure out how to get it from 200 miles away to back to where I live and all of that.
So you're a step closer, though.
I'm a step closer. The money isn't so much the issue as just trying to find. So I have a very particular set of parameters for what I want. Which is its own challenge to find just that right one. But then it's like, oh, this is exactly what I want, but it's in Texas. So I got to drive 5.5 hours just to do a test drive to see if it's exactly what I want, and then decide if I'm going to buy it, and then I guess get it shipped up here maybe, or so. I don't know. That's the problem I have. So I'm not in any hurry to get it.
Yep.
At this stage, so I'm still kind of saving my pennies because the more I put towards it, the better of a vehicle I can get. But
Mm-hmm.
I could actually have a van right now if I don't mind it being bright yellow.
You can
I
paint
mind
it.
having it be. I mind it being bright yellow. But then it's
They
going to
see you
cost
coming.
me. Then it's going to cost me even more money just to paint it, so I'm not embarrassed to drive it around.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, one of the what is it? Not Hertz. Well, it's one of the moving companies. I always
Mm.
forget their name.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Where they had the big yellow vehicles. They've got like 3 or 4 of them right here in Wichita, about like 7 miles away from where I'm sitting, that I
Ah,
could certainly pick up. And it's like, I really don't want a yellow van. I don't want to have to go through all the hassle of getting it painted to whatever
yeah,
some different color and all that, because that's just going to cost even more. It's a
exactly.
little bit more than I'm willing to put into it.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
there's
it's
no
great.
sneaking in a yellow van.
And I mean, that's the thing, right? Is you know exactly what you're looking for, which is half of it right there. You know the type of equipment you want to be able to put on it or add to it. There's another excellent factor, right? Is so you've got everything in place. Now it's just getting all those pieces to arrive at the time. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you because, like I say, I mean, you do such an amazing job of explaining these things, and to see you actually, out and boogieing around, and yeah, that'll be awesome. And before I catch up on the comments again, so share with folks, where are all the channels they can potentially find you?
Oh,
Because you're a very popular guest
well,
and co-host.
on Saturdays, I'm normally on with Karen over at Doof Doof Paranormal.
Okay.
Uh, I'm also a relatively new channel that started up with some of my friends that live down in Caney, Kansas. I mention them all the time, and they've actually accepted me to be a member of their Border Town Paranormal crew, so I can
Nice.
be more official, I guess. In some, I don't know what it means. I get the decoder ring and the T-shirt. I don't know,
Cool.
but it's it. I'm still doing the same thing I did with them, but they have a couple different shows. I was just on one last night with them called Border Town Strange,
Border.
where all of
Yep.
these are on YouTube, and where they talk about a lot of just paranormal stuff. It's not just UFOs, but a lot of it is stuff that's they have famous stories of it and what things that happen in their area, because where their area is very much like how, because there are certain places in the world that have all the weird things happening at the same time, where
Yep.
uh, you got Skinwalker Ranch, you've got Mount Shasta in California, you've got what's that one up in the Northeast? It's one of the triangles, Bridgewater Triangle
Oh,
area, things like that, where all these places you have UFO activity, you have ghost activity, you have cryptid activity. And Caney, Kansas is kind of one of those areas, going back for like hundreds of years of just strange things going on,
hmm.
where they've got Bigfoot. They have cryptids that aren't Bigfoot. They got lake monsters. They got UFOs. They got spook lights. Those are those weird lights that you see off in the
Yeah,
distance
yeah.
sometimes, and there's no explanation for what it is. They got those. They got pretty much all, and of course, and a ton of different ghost haunted locations. They've got time anomalies. That's what we talked about last night's show, where
Wow.
that they've actually experienced. Where they're sitting there working away, and somebody comes in and like, "What are you doing? We've been waiting for like 45 minutes." It's like, "No, I've only been in here like 5." It's like, "Look outside, it's dark." What? Wait a minute. It's like, and
Wow.
they had like pictures that they had taken inside, and
Yeah.
they're snapping pictures fairly regularly, and there's like a 45-minute gap there between the timestamp on their pictures that shouldn't have
Wow.
been there. They had this missing time for the people inside this building. It was very strange.
Yeah. Wow. Oh no, and you just froze there briefly talking about anomalies.
Time slip. I've been sitting here for 45 minutes. No.
Suddenly an example of the time slip. That's cool, Enzo. That's good. Even for you, man. I'm impressed.
Yeah, that was not me. But so yeah, there's strange places like that. That's one of the reasons that I really kind of ramped up the idea for the van, is so that I can, because they're about an hour and 45 minutes away from where I live,
Yeah.
and I can drive down there and not have to worry about getting a hotel or anything like that. I can just
Yep.
sleep in a cot in the back of the van while I'm helping investigate something that might be going on there. Because
Yeah.
all of them, don't get me wrong, they're all great people, they're fantastic people, but they have day jobs, so they can't dedicate, you know,
Yep.
being awake all day working at their job and then trying to spend all night investigating weird stuff in their area, because the weird
Yeah.
stuff only seems to happen at night, usually.
Yep.
So that's where I could come in to kind of help them out and just kind of go down there and spend like a week or whatever doing this or
Yeah.
that, and or just traveling around the U.S. in the van, wherever any kind of weird hot spot is. Because I picked up a few books on hot spots and things like that when I was out at Contact in the Desert earlier this year. So there's a plan. I just need to
Nice.
get to step one of buying the van. That's not yellow.
That's not yellow. It's funny. We're just gonna pop up here. So we've got Andrew, not used to really hot wet up. UK. Yeah, see it. It's a definite different climate there. So excited when it rained last night, thinking it would cool down. Yeah, it
Nope.
doesn't. Well, when I was a kid, I remembered you loved the rain because you knew it was going to cool down. That doesn't happen anymore. And so I don't think you've seen some of my latest stuff. So our basement flooded again. It's been
Oh,
flooding
geez.
off and on since February because we've had to wait for the weather and we're trying to figure out where it's coming. So don't get me wrong, I'm glad for the rain for the plants, but my basement, like this shit's got to stop soon. And
You
this
didn't
week
you didn't want an indoor swimming pool? What's the
the
problem?
cats
Sounds
thought
great.
it was cool until they realized I'm stuck in the living room. I need a bus to take me to the stairs. Because when we were trying to mop up and everything, Tiki had followed me down because that's what Tiki does. And she'd got bored, so she went to play in the living room. And while she was chasing her ball, the water was like it was literally gushing through the wall, like spout.
Oh wow.
So yeah, we're not talking just little trickles here. It was like, but we're still better off than a lot of other places. In while I'm in London, Toronto was even worse. So while Tiki was playing and I'm going, oh God, what are we going to do now? The water's still coming in. And she came to the end of the living room, and like the stairs are only like maybe a foot and a half away, but it's all literally water now. There's nowhere dry for a little kitty to step. And she's looking at me like, Mom, I'm like, I'm mom.
Hey,
Oh,
human,
fine.
fix this. Get on it.
Yeah. So I'm like, so I went and picked her up, put her on the stairs, and she moved higher up, and then just watched me work and mop. But then the other day, my husband picked up these pad type things that you put them down, and they thankfully absorb the water, so you don't end up doing like 10 loads of laundry to catch
Right.
up. So yeah, I'm hoping we get that solved soon. That's been my adventure. There's my friend Kat, and I saw her yard video today. Loved it. Saying
Do you
hi.
not
Oh,
have a sump pump that you can install there? No.
well, we've never needed one before. I mean,
Oh,
we've
okay.
never had this kind of an issue. And in February, it just, we had that quick thaw. And then when we've had, because we haven't just had, and it doesn't happen when it's just a regular rain, but we've had these torrential, insane downpours that are just like someone taking a bucket going kapoof for about an hour or two. And it just, so there's been flooding everywhere. Like, I'm sure the insurance people are going crazy. We actually, for the first time in over 35 years, we had an insurance claim. And we actually got some money, not that it covered all the repairs we had to do, but at
Yes.
least it was better than a kick in the ass, but nowhere near what we've paid out. Oh, what are these two? Oh, then this is a big deal, Enzo. Then went to the movies. He is not a movie person, so he went to the movies. Who are you? And he saw Deadpool. It was a good movie to
There
watch.
you go.
Oh, woo! Look at you go, Van, at the theaters. Might make the boyfriend take me. And we saw the No Sneaking in the Yellow Van.
Oop.
Oh, Gravity Falls. Now that I haven't heard of. Gravity Falls.
It's a cartoon, I think.
Is it?
Yeah.
I have to, and yeah, see, Cat's seen my water pouring through the wall video.
Yeesh.
I couldn't help it. I had to put it up. I mean, how many times are you going to, the first time it happened, because I went down to check, because husband was at work, rain's gushing down. I thought, maybe I should go see what's shaking down there. And sure enough, and I've got the camera, and it's like literally pouring in. I'm like, this shit only happens in movies. Not
Your house hit an iceberg.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just nuts. So, but yeah, so fingers crossed this week we'll get it figured out and find. Oh, there we go. Disney cartoon in a supernatural little town. See, I was thinking Gravity Falls. What state or province is that in? Because there's different
Probably
different
somewhere, yeah.
things. But yeah, so well, we've checked, and see, you do a lot of there was one you were talking about, and I was trying to remember it when I read the Roswell book. Where were you where you found that neat arrow that points to Roswell?
Oh, that was in Geneseo, Kansas, where it's a tiny little town. About 3 or 4 weeks ago. Well, it was June 7th, 8th, whatever that first Saturday in June or July was. Excuse me. We got invited up there, being the Caney gang. We went up there for Kansas UFO Day. It's a self-proclaimed title that they're the capital for UFOs in Kansas, which is, I guess, if somebody's going to claim it, they might as well. But basically, the story behind this little town is the back in the 50s and 60s, the town doctor there, because 50s and 60s UFO stuff was in its heyday. There was stuff going on all over the place in the 50s and 60s in the United States. And it was all the buzz. It was all always in the paper and on the radio broadcasts. And if you had a TV, it was on the TV talking about it. And in this little town, the town doctor, he was very interested in it. And he basically started doing investigations. Started doing research into it and talking to witnesses and taking down their statements. And, he was basically like any of the big investigation type things of just one person in the 50s. So he didn't have the internet. Most places, rural places, didn't even necessarily have a phone. So he did a lot of mail back and forth or cross-country driving to the other end of the state to go talk to somebody about whatever it was they saw, things like that. And after he passed away, his house, they turned it into the town museum, and they have one room that is just full of all of his UFO stuff from his investigations. And he had a couple people that were helping him out. One guy was like an artist. He drew all these, people would describe, because especially in the 50s, there was a lot of ships landing in people's backyards and very human-like aliens in it saying that they were from somewhere within our own. Hey, we're from Venus. You want to go for a
Mm.
ride? And they'd take them for a spin around and show them all these things and come back, and then they would leave them with no evidence but just a cool story. But that happened a lot back in the 50s. But so he's got a lot of these, witness statements, and they have an artist that was working with him where he would draw what they were describing. And there's some pretty articulate drawings of, the interiors of some of these spacecraft that they said they were on and things like that. So it's very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that would be cool, taking an artist with you. And I mean, you bring up an excellent point. In the 50s, you didn't all have, your cell phones and this and that.
Yep.
So to take an artist who could draw what you were describing and then to have that on record, right? And the other point, like you say, telephones, you had to drive there, or it was snail mail, which could be a week or two in between.
Yep.
Like, that's the one thing that for the younger generation, they don't remember those times, right? To them, it's all instant, quick, social media. How come you didn't know that sooner? Whereas for, some of us white hair folk, we remember that it wasn't always quick and immediate. And that, again, brings up the difference between Roswell 1947 trying to figure things out versus anything that happens now in the 2000s when it's suddenly boom all over the place, right? And then as we were talking too, could have even been before we came live, of is that really a benefit to the field, or does it just make things that much more complex? Like you were saying with the AIs, you could even question, am I real? Well, the joke or the ad used to be years ago, is it real or Memorex? Now it's, is it a person or an AI talking? Like it really is changing things in the field.
In Geneseo, they have, because as I mentioned, the whole house is like a museum for the whole town. And it's a very tiny town. I don't think it has even 1,000 people in it. It's probably more like about 500 or 100 or so. But they have on display there the first AT&T operator switchboard device that they would use.
Oh, wow.
This giant wood contraption with tubes in it and a million different wires. It looks very unsafe, but it was probably fine back in the 20s and 30s when they made it. And where they have to literally, this person's calling in on this line, so you have to disconnect the connector and then connect it to whoever it is they want to talk to that line that goes out to their house, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I think it had 20 or 30 lines that it connected out to in the local area.
Wow.
It was just this amazing piece of technology that looks like somebody slapped together over a case of beer on a 3-day weekend in the garage. And but that was it. That was the highest tech thing on the planet back then.
Well, and I remember those, and I remember watching Laugh-In, and who was the actress who did Ruth? But was it Ruth Buzzy?
Lily Tomlin did the operator character, I think. Lily Tomlin had the operator character, I believe.
There you go. It was Lily Tomlin.
Hair all done up and chewing the gum. And,
yep, and doing all the
yeah,
doing the plugs and things. And yeah, that was like you say, that was considered high tech at the time, right?
Yep.
And I just went, hello to Diane. No worries about running late. And I'd said, hello, life before. Yeah. I don't know if it was more civilized, but you couldn't reach people as much. If you wanted to go talk to somebody, if you wanted to do FaceTime, you had to go find the face to do time with. And I agree with Ben. It's it's a double-edged sword because there are so many good things about it, like being able to do this live stream, for example, and have, people join us. You just have to be extra careful about your sources. But what I've discovered, and I had mentioned this too, that rereading these books again, I mean, even with a book, you have to be careful. Just because an author says they're a journalist or whatever and it's a published work doesn't mean it's factual.
It's true.
So even before the internet and things, there was other ways of getting crap information out there. The switchboard, yeah, I love those things. We're still rude and uncivilized. You're right,
This
Kat.
wasn't
There are
it
some.
wasn't instantaneous, yeah. Where you can get that rude treatment immediately today
Yeah.
versus
Well,
you had to wait for that mail to work its way around to you, tell you to F off or something. But it's kind of weird because usually you would have a chance to cool off before you would go yell at somebody or something like that. It's like, it's just not worth it to, try and look up their phone number to yell at them on their phone, which all they would do anyway was like, yeah, whatever, click. And that
yeah.
was it. There were no answering machines, back then and stuff like that. And it was a lot of times like for that, I'm sure that was that original switchboard setup I was talking about earlier with the 20 or 30 lines.
Mm.
I'm sure that there were they used to call them a party line where the line would basically be shared like within like
Yep.
3 or 4 houses.
We
So,
had
but it was
one
the
of
one
those
number.
to begin.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not that long ago that that kind of filtered away. So they were certainly doing it way back then.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And so I remember our first phone, and it was the rotary, but we
Yep.
had a party line for a while. And then, woo, we got a private line. So, it was just us. But again, and you're right. And I wonder, and maybe this is my psychology background coming up. I'm really curious because you've made an excellent point. How much is it, and these people flying off the handle, and I just put up a video about keyboard warriors in a journal that I do instead of getting on the keyboard or recording a video. But I wonder how much that's changed people maybe doing that step back and not just blah, this has pissed me off, whatever. I got to get it out there and share it with the world.
Right.
And then the drama just escalates, right? Versus, well, when you and I were growing up, that wasn't an option. Like you kind of had to take that cool down time, whether it was to write a letter to someone or whatever. You couldn't just, I'm going to fire up my laptop or whatever and blah, 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 and then, right?
Even if you were mad enough to call them straight away from your house, they may not have been home. And it would just ring and ring and ring, and that was it. Or
Yep.
someone would pick up and is like, hey, I need to talk to Billy because I said something I didn't like. It's like, Billy's not home. He'll be home later for like dinner at 5. Well, where is it? I don't know. Because you back then, kids could just run amok.
Exactly.
Like so you didn't have to worry about weirdos apparently as much back then. I'm sure they were around, but I know my rule was you need to be home by the time the street light comes on. That was the rule where I was. But for further back before then, it was probably sunset, I would guess, or something like that.
Well, see, and I grew up on a farm, so it was just like she'll come in when she comes in.
Yeah. If you were on a farm, I'm sure you were doing something as part of the farm. You were working. It's not like you were just out screwing around and doing something silly.
Well, when I was little, I was doing silly things. And I mean, my poor dad trying to teach me a lesson, because my fun thing was when the tractor was going and the wagon was behind it, you run along the wagon and jump up on the tractor. So my father thought he would teach me a lesson about why this was unsafe, except he tripped and cracked his ankle. I'm like, Good lesson, Dad.
Hey,
Maybe older people shouldn't jump on wagons that are moving, but it's worked good for me. And I don't know how I made it without breaking bones, because I was climbing trees, jumping on wagons, and all the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, again, it was such a different world, right? And I mean, anything too, I've always enjoyed astronomy, and that was part of my interest in UFOs and potentially other life out there. So my dad bought me my first telescope when I was 10, which I still, by the way, have. It's just a little tiny thing with its little teeny tripod. Best thing I've had to look at the planets and things. But I was so excited because we were out in the country, so not all this light pollution like the city. And I'm so excited because it was a night, of course, when the moon was out, and I'm looking and I'm like, oh, Dad, you have to come look. And he's like, are there aliens? I'm like, no, it's the moon.
it's craters and mountains and stuff.
And he's like, is someone waving at you, honey? And I'm like, no, Dad, let's not be ridiculous. But it's that, and it's the one thing about being in the city now, and like I say, there's just more and more and more light pollution. But I wonder too, in terms of some of these UFO sightings, is it just that people don't recognize the difference between, say, a satellite when the sun hits it? Because, and I can't remember the name of the type now, but there's a brief flash and then it fades. But it's again that perspective, right, of when the sun hits it, and then of course as it's moving, that's why but it's a satellite, it's not a UFO, whatever.
The biggest thing lately, the last several years, have been the Starlink satellites. Because
Mm,
when they launch those, there's like 30 on one rocket, and they all go out at the same time, and they eventually spread apart. But
right.
shortly after they separate from the rocket, you'll look up in the sky and just see a line of these dots going by. They're all moving in the same direction. That'll take up half the sky as
Mm,
they're moving along. They're called a Starlink train.
yeah.
uh, Now, over time, of course, they maneuver around to their particular orbit and do their thing. But
Right.
when they are like that, that's a little disconcerting if you don't know what it is, to see this conga line of lights in the sky moving along. That's not normal.
Well, yeah.
Because
And
for a
that's
satellite, there's no like flashing lights or anything like that. If it's moving in a straight line, you see it like an hour or so after sunset or before sunrise.
mm-hmm.
That's like we were talking about earlier, where that angle of the sun is still hitting it at
Yeah.
way up at altitude, wherever it's at. And so it's all lit up while you're looking at black skies, nighttime skies. So it makes it shine even brighter, so it stands out. As long as
Mm-hmm.
it's moving in a straight line like that, it's probably a satellite. If it's dancing around and changing angles and stuff like that, that's not a satellite. So that's something else.
And that's the thing, right? And again, that's where, well, and the other is, how many people mistake Venus, because you can see it when the sun's up, not just at night, and Jupiter. I mean, they're both quite bright.
Mhm.
But for people who either may not know about astronomy and look at the sky, they suddenly see this bright thing kind of hanging there. Or, like you say, with the satellites, they don't have the blinky lights like a plane or move in the same direction. One book, and I was hoping to find the page on it, is called Seeing in the Dark by Timothy Ferris. And it's an older book, but he was talking about, and it was, well, probably decades ago now, when we had that big power outage for days. And it was, it was up here, it was in the States. There was something that happened with the grid. Well, in Los Angeles, all their emergency lines were blocked like crazy because people were freaking out. There were all these things in the sky and they didn't know what they were. They'd never seen stars, right? And they had no idea what is this, an invasion? What's going on? There's all these lights up there. And I'm thinking, now that was decades ago. Imagine how excuse me, imagine now how many more people have no idea, or if, even if they're just driving out in the country and they suddenly look up and then here's all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, as an astronomy nerd, light pollution is like the bane of my existence. My ideal home would be way out in the dark because I could just go in my backyard and start looking away. But I often, because I've been thinking about moving, but to do exactly that. And one of the things I do is I'll look up a place. Oh, it looks like a nice place. Yeah, I can maybe afford that if I sell my place. And the very next step is I have a link to a light pollution map where I can get like the GPS coordinates for where the house is that I'm looking at and cross-reference it with that and see, because there's a chart basically of light pollution where a 1 is middle of the ocean at midnight with no moon, where you literally can't see your hand in the face.
Yeah.
Then there's a 9, which is like Times Square, where there's so much light you're not going to see anything.
Yeah.
So you like where I live, I'm actually pretty close to Wichita, and everything from like due north of me to due west, that area in between is just washed out from the city lights. I can't see much of anything. Which, like a couple of months ago when we had the big Northern Lights go off, where everybody got to see them, which being in Canada, I know that's not as big a deal for you, but for other people south of you, that's a much bigger deal. But I couldn't see anything because where it was, which I would have had to look due north, was just washed out from the city lights. I could have driven in a different direction to get away from it and certainly seen something, but I've seen the Northern Lights before, so it's not that. I've spent a lot of time in Alaska where it's right over your head there. So it's like, yeah, that's cute and all, but I've seen way better.
And see, although you say because I'm in Canada, to me, the Northern Lights are a big deal because of where I am in Ontario. We don't really get to see them very often. I've only had a chance to see them twice, and very faintly because of the light pollution. And they were just more of a whitish twinkly, which was cool, but certainly nothing like what you'd see in Alaska or farther up North Canada.
Well, for you right now, we've just gotten a few blasts from the sun here the last couple of days, and we're more that are going to be hitting like this weekend. So you may get a chance to see a little bit better view here coming up soon. So
fingers crossed. But like I say,
and even like if you can't see it with your eye, as goofy and weird as it sounds, you will be able to see it with your phone.
Really?
Your phone does have certain filtering properties on it, where if you just look on the screen, you might pick it. It's not going to be like the amazing pictures like you see on TV,
in the calendars,
or something like that. The calendars, it's nothing like that, but you still will be able to see it.
I'll have to give that a try. The other thing that I found, although it makes it hard if you're trying to hone in on a star, is if you use binoculars, you can actually pick up stars, but you end up doing this, and somehow the light pollution, I mean, you certainly don't see stars the same as if you were out in the country.
Sure.
You can see a lot more stars just holding up your binoculars. Somehow it gets past that light pollution. My telescope is a whole other, well, no, I could probably do that sometime too, but yeah, I'm the same. I would really just love to be out in the country and doing that type of thing as well. But yes, but we've completely gotten off our UFOs here.
Easily done.
What a shock. So one thing I did, well, there's a ton of things I wanted to talk to you about, but you mentioned Skinwalker Ranch. So let's kind of chat about that. Now, you recommended, and I'm going to hold these up. You recommended Skinwalker at the Pentagon, which was an excellent read. It's part two of Hunt for the Skinwalker, which was a surprise find for me eons ago when I went to Indigo. I've become that thrift store person now because I could buy 5 books probably for Walker, but this is by Colin Kelleher and George Knapp, so one of the scientists and a journalist. This one includes James T. Lakatsky, as well as Kelleher and Knapp. Lakatsky, if I remember, he's from one of the military groups, isn't he, Enzo? Do you
Yeah,
remember?
he was actually part of Bigelow's team back then for the NIDS team for back then when they were doing the OSAP part of it. And
Right.
he's usually not too far away from any kind of government funding weird program. He will certainly be somewhere nearby, it seems.
Hmm. What did have you read Hunt for the Skinwalker yet?
Uh, I haven't read it. I've because there's been several like documentaries by those same people. I've seen those, so I have a pretty strong grasp of what was going on. The Skinwalkers at the Pentagon talks a little bit more about how the Department of Defense was involved in the processes. They do talk about some of the because Lukatsky was out there,
Yep.
and so they do talk about some of the weirdness that they did encounter in there and how the government kind of didn't care about some of that. They just wanted the UFO stuff. They didn't care
Mm-hmm.
about bulletproof dire wolves and dino beavers and stuff like that. So that part they kind of like shove that out of the way. We're going to keep that. We're going to keep the Pentagon from knowing that part of the story. We'll just give them the UFO part because that's what they want. So
Well, and that's the thing. And so you're right. In the first book, it's a lot more about some of the things that were going on at the ranch. And it starts with they used the name Gorman, a pseudonym. Another author uses a different name, but in both of the Kelleher Knapp books, they refer to the original owners as, or the owners before Bigelow as the Gormans. Now, here's a question, and because I know you look into all of this stuff, in both books they mention obviously there was a previous owner. They'd had that place since the 1940s. It was uninhabited for 7 years. They'd moved into, I think it was Salt Lake City, a short distance away. And part of the agreement when they sold to the Gormans in 1994 was don't dig before you tell us you're digging. Now, here's my thing with Bigelow and his research group is, and the books. Why is there nothing from those original owners? And what was this don't dig thing? Because as I've read some of this stuff, I'm almost wondering, is there a toxic dump? Like, what the hell is under this place that they don't
that
want you digging?
that is one of the theories about it is that there may not be anything paranormal at all, but there's something in the ground itself that because they do the same thing on the TV show too for Skinwalker Ranch, where anytime they dig, that's when all the wacky stuff happens, that kind of stuff. Are they actually experiencing something, or is there some kind of weird fungus or something under the ground that when they dig it up, it gives people hallucinations and they
Mm,
imagine that there's bulletproof werewolf things
dire.
and things like that. But at least like from the TV show, they do catch like UAPs and strange, radio interference and things like that. So that's
Hmm.
something. It's not the same as uh, werewolf guys in trench coats smoking cigarettes on the edge of the field, like was reported from the earlier team. But because it's you start getting into like that super wacky stuff, and that's when a lot of people are. That's why they were trying to keep that part of it quiet at the Pentagon. That's what you find
Yeah.
out in the second book is, yeah, we're not going to let everybody else know. As a matter of fact, we're going to even change the name where because they were there because they got what was it $22 million. Bigelow's group got
Over
to
the two
start the
years. Yep.
research at Skinwalker Ranch. And at the Pentagon, there's a person that's their job is to take all the information they have and kind of filter it out. It's like, okay, this is useful, this is not useful, that kind of thing. For
Yep.
their because they were sent there to research UFOs. That's what they
Yep.
wanted them to do. Well, they sent them everything, including, werewolves and poltergeist activity, and there was some UFO stuff in there too. But at the Pentagon, they kept all that other stuff hidden, all the super weirds that they just cherry picked out the UFO related stuff, and that was under the ATIP name,
Yep.
which is where that comes in. It wasn't an official program. It was just this is the safe thing for the people of the Pentagon to go, because if you got generals and such running the Pentagon, they're like, what the hell is this ghost crap? What's this werewolf thing? Why are you showing me this? I don't care. And what are those people smoking out there in Utah? Something's going on. Why are we giving them $22 million to sit out there and tell fairy tales? That kind of a thing.
Yep.
Now, I do think that they experienced weird stuff out there. Because they were reporting everything they were seeing. If they were like trying to fake stuff, they would only send them UFO things. They wouldn't send them, stories about dire wolves and cattle getting stacked up inside of trailers mysteriously and stuff like that. They wouldn't send them anything like that. They would just send them UFO related stuff if that was the case, if they were just making it all up.
Well, that's an excellent point, actually. Now, the show I haven't seen, is it Bigelow or is it because Bigelow sold the ranch in 2016 for a huge profit? Because according to the book, he bought it from Gorman for $200,000 in, I think it was 96, because I think the Gormans just stayed there a couple of years. Things just got too freaking weird and stuff with their dogs, and that's when they called it a day. So Bigelow paid them $200,000. In 2016, he sold it to Adamantium for $4 million. Weird stuff ups your property value, man.
Apparently, weird hot spot comes at a high price, I guess. It is very unique property, apparently. But there are reports going back for that whole valley area where it is a lot. It's not specifically just that ranch where weird stuff happens. It kind of happens in a much larger area there going back centuries. The original Native Americans living there have a ton of stories of very similar things, strange lights in the sky. And that's where the Skinwalker legend comes from. Skinwalker, according to Native American legend, is basically like a kind of like a cursed medicine man kind of a thing, where they can shape shift into other creatures, normal creatures like wolves and things like that, and try and harass people and lure them away from the village and kill them, kind of a thing.
Yep. Now, is the show based on the time that Bigelow owned the property, or is it based on new stuff now?
The show does talk about Bigelow a little bit, mostly out of what they've revealed out of those two books is kind of the only thing to know, because Bigelow will not release anything. The actual NIDS, the National Institute of Discovery Science program that ran that stuff for Bigelow, they have not released any kind of paperwork or anything. Now they've had some of the people from like those books have visited. They're like, yeah, we tried some stuff over there one time, but didn't find anything. And just really kind of vague stuff, but they don't mention any specifics. So that's still, because that's considered Bigelow's property, and he doesn't have to give it to anybody if he doesn't want to. And so far he hasn't. So
why wouldn't he share it out though?
You would think they would, but for whatever reason, they don't. I wish they would, because I'd like to know
Yeah.
too what's going on out there. Because as it turns out, Bigelow also had another property that was very similar to Skinwalker Ranch in Colorado. That a lot of the same wacky stuff, which now has gone on to a different set of hands, and they're finding all kinds of weird stuff out there. Like they're like some kind of like underground mining thing that they were doing out there, and then they just covered it all up. They just like buried all of this, like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment. They just bulldoze it all over. It's weird.
It's
There's a lot of
very
strange stuff.
weird.
So, there. I feel like they may have discovered something, but they're being totally quiet about whatever it is they found, good or bad. It's either they found something so amazing that they can't let anybody know about it, or they didn't find anything at all and they're embarrassed to say that they spent $22 million and nothing to show for it.
But you
So
still wonder, why would they bury equipment? Like, what's on the equipment? See, and this is how
it's crazy.
conspiracies start, right? When you don't get the
Right.
answers and
You
all
make
the
something up.
facts, yeah, your mind goes to, what the hell are they trying to hide? But yeah, okay, we're just gonna quick catch up on comments. Couldn't block people. Yep, leave the phone off the hook. The dial ring phones, blast from the past, actual videotape. That would mess people up. Starting to come back, get videos of confused kids. Feel so old when I see tapes now. There's 2 street light, 1 street light at the end of the road. Oh man, I would love that. Had to explain origin of save icon in games.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
It's got a little picture of the disc there. Yeah.
Floppy disk, that's too funny. Disposable camera, get a good picture, developed a week later. Seeing, it's funny. Well, it isn't, because it's going to take me frickin' hours and hours to get all my photos organized. But I remember when I had just a camera, you used to have to go out, buy your film. You could pick, roll of 12 or 24. You were really particular about what you took a picture of. Versus now you have a phone, click, click, click. I have, and I wish I was lying, thousands of pictures of my cats. And it's like, oh, I need to be more selective, and because I'll take it and go, oh, that'd be a great thumbnail, or oh, that's a great capture. And then it's 3 weeks later and I'm like, oh crap, how far back, how long ago did I take that picture? It's like, wow. Disposable cameras. See, I didn't really use those. I had my little Kodak, and I love that thing. Starlink, not required to, yeah, that's true. And because you're right, Enzo, if people would see that, and actually, when I was trying to figure out my not meteor last year, when I looked up about, did anyone else in this area see something, it did comment about the year before when Starlink and a few people had called, sure enough, had called the station to the radio or TV station, and it was Starlink they'd captured at a theme park. Yep. That was the other. You didn't know. And if you were on vacation, you're like, oh, I hope these turn out when I get home, because
Yeah.
you can't hop back.
I hope this little cardboard and plastic thing is going to turn out great. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. Less light. What my imagination would do with all that emptiness. Yeah, don't read Michael McDowell and go wandering in the dark.
Yeah, you have to be careful. There's actually, if you get out like where it's really, really dark, way away from the cities, once you start getting down to like that level, like 3 and 2, 1 area on that scale, that's when you can start seeing structure to the Milky Way. You've always seen pictures of the Milky Way where it's that banding that goes across the sky. when you get out where it's really dark and you're using your 3D eyeballs where you can see it yourself, it looks like monstrously gigantic clouds where you can see the edges of it very clearly, and you can see that, like when you look at it like a thunderstorm, like a big thunderhead, that's got all these little crinkles and stuff like that in the edges. That's what the Milky Way looks like when you get out far enough into the dark where you can clearly see it. And
Wow.
it's kind of weird to see that level of detail, that something that you know is hundreds, if not thousands of light years away. It's like, that's really big. I'm a very small, little insignificant speck.
But that would be amazing. I mean, I've seen pictures. I have a book of photos from the Hubble telescope, but it would be so different, like you say, to look up and see that.
Yeah, it's to see it with your own eyes, because seeing a picture is one thing, but seeing it in stereogram with your two eyes, about way over your head, it's awe inspiring.
Yeah. No doubt. So Ven went and checked out the light pollution map. Like the dark, though I'm not a night child. Enzo, did you do anything special during the solar eclipse event?
I did. I actually was on a live stream with another friend of mine, and at that time I bought a smart telescope, a portable smart telescope. It's only like this big.
Nice.
And I had managed to rig it up to where I could have it live in my background here, because this isn't my real background, in case you didn't know.
You don't really live on the beach.
I'm not really at the beach. I'm not really. This is the beach, the beautiful shoreline with dogs running around of Kansas. No, but I actually might have a video I could pull up. Want to look at it, but I made a time lapse of it and the whole thing. We were watching it live on mine, and it wasn't super special, but it was something that this little $400 thing that I just kind of clunked onto my backyard and was able to watch the whole thing live from where I live. I wasn't near totality or anything like that where I was. I had planned to travel to some place that was. It turns out it was just as well I didn't, because it ended up being cloudy there, which I would have been furious if I had driven all that way.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Especially if you have to go somewhere else. But that's cool that you were able to capture part of that.
Oh, yeah, I got the whole thing. Let's see if I can find it real fast here.
Okay, well, while you're taking a peekaboo, we'll see what other comments we have. There's a reason I don't camp. Heard a bird. I hear a bird in the woods. My mind goes to escaped axe murder and werewolf. Cat, you're hilarious. Noah shouts at me going walking late at night. Well, don't go on the moors, because you don't want to be a werewolf. Pepper spray shoes, run, kick in. And again, as a chick, it's required in daytime. Cat, you really do get used to the darkness. And that's true. I miss living in the country so much in those nice, peaceful nights. Sex, go walk, sit. Most dangerous thing I've seen is a badger. Yeah, well, it's the humans you have to worry about, not the animals. It's the same as paranormal investigators. It's not the location. And yes, Cat, adamantium, like Wolverine's claws. I can't remember.
The property was bought by this real estate tycoon, basically, there at Utah. His name is Brandon Fugel, and he is a super nerd. He's got, because he's got millions of dollars, and he buys like actual movie used props from like all the. He has like the T-800 from one of the scenes from Terminator 2, the big exoskeleton that was like just the robot, not Arnold or anything, but with like the full gun that was actually used in the movie. It was one of the actual ones from the movie, standing up in the corner of his office, and he's got a bunch of other movie props. He's a super nerd.
Wow.
And I guess if I had gazillions of dollars and I'm buying, haunted ranches and stuff, why not? Why wouldn't you buy, movie used products, from the actual show? It's like, but he's got a lot of stuff like that. He is a nerd's nerd for sure. So
Wow.
Adamantium is what he was calling his company at one time. So yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, and that's cool. And I couldn't think of his name, so thank you so much for that, Enzo. I'd be the one wanting to pet the yes. Cat would want to pet the badger. Not a good idea, sweetie.
Yeah, the one thing that they described, I don't know if it was the first book, I think they described it, or it was the second one, but everyone jokingly calls it the dino beaver, but it was a beaver sized creature, but it had like not scales, like spikes on its back, sort of like an alligator, or whatever that dinosaur was that has the plate on its back. Stegosaurus. So something like that they saw scurrying around, which it immediately scurried. Of course, it scurried into the high brush and disappeared in the woods before anybody could get a picture or anything like that of it. But that was just another one of the endless weird things that they saw out there.
And when I read that part, I was thinking, and it's the second book, and I only know that because I just reread all these in the last couple of weeks. But when I read that part, and Noah, if you ever watch this, I'll apologize now, sweetie, but I write like crazy in my books. But I put down Stephen King, The Mist, because that talks about the different dimensions, the military, and this stuff all coming through. And that's exactly what that Stegosaurus type thing made me think of. But see, Diane, probably why people try to report stuff, increase their property value. And see that that in itself is a double-edged sword when you think of Amityville, and there's a huge shit show at the moment with the Conjuring house. But when those properties, well, the Conjuring house, actually, it might have been the Amityville Horror. In both of those movies, they gave out the actual address, which was a shit move. I'm sorry. And then it just became a huge boondoggle for the owners and that. But yeah, if you want to up your property value, tell them you've got ghosties. More danger from falling in a ditch than animals. Only thousands, 30 gigabytes. That's it. Hello, Giselle. Welcome. Sorry it's taken a while to say hi. And I agree. Science is mind-blowing for sure. I enjoy it. I'm just not smart like Enzo. I can't explain it, but I can wrap my head around some of it. Wondering when the next solar eclipse is. Enzo, that might be you.
It's going to be a little while. The next technical North American eclipse is 2044, so another 20 years, and that one is just Canada's. It's going to be Canada's specialty there. It only skirts the very north part of the United States, and it's mostly the western part of Canada that'll see that. But the following year, there's going to be another one that cuts diagonally across the whole United States. That'll be the one to wait for 2045. But
I'll see it from the other side.
Yeah. If you want to pull up that share I have down below. This is what this looked like from my backyard. You can even see a couple of sunspots here and there.
Yeah.
And this is just a time lapse that I did of the entire thing.
That's so cool.
The moon comes in. Notice that it moves like kind of like to the upper left here, and then when it gets about halfway through, it shifts and kind of goes almost straight up.
That's interesting. Now, why would it do that, Enzo?
It's because of our point of view. It's sort of like if you were standing a short distance away from a railroad track, where
Okay.
as you know, if the
Yeah, and
railroad
they
track was in front of you and you're watching the train coming, it's coming at an angle and then it's parallel to you and then it's off at another angle from your point of view as you're watching it go by. Same exact thing with this, the moon passing between us and the
Louis.
sun, where it's just that change in the angle as it's moving away.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What a great capture. And that was just from your backyard, Enzo.
Yeah, this is actually I've got a picture here.
Wow.
That's it. This just
So cool.
this little white thing here that I had plugged in an external battery to make sure it was good enough to do it, but it
Yeah.
auto tracks stars and everything like that. So I don't have, once you set it up, it's like follow sun, and then it shows up on my tablet.
Wow. I got to get me one of those. That's so cool.
But yeah, it's just out there on my back porch, sitting there taking pictures.
Nice.
That's what it looked like when I was broadcasting before, where I could just point at the sun as it was disappearing.
Nice. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I agree, Giselle. That's great footage. Diane, also, it's awesome. Thanking
For
you for sharing that.
for a little like $450 smart telescope, cheapo, just threw it out there. Ding, 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 ding. Follow sun. Blam. And
Nice.
the way that it transmits to my tablet that I was running it with, I then linked my tablet into this computer. That's how I was able to put it up behind me as a background. And I just kind of
Mm.
squished myself off to one side and just had that up there the entire time, which it turned out to be good because a lot of the places that they had set up in the U.S., it's like, we're at this city where they're, the eclipse is going to hit this city next. There was a huge band of clouds and rain over the
Ooh.
center of the U.S., right where the main path of it was.
Of
So a
course.
lot of their footage was pretty crappy. I mean, granted, I wasn't in the totality, but my
But
footage was
still.
cloud free.
Well, and your footage is amazing because, like you say, you could see one of the sunspots, you could see the moon going over. And yeah, you're right. It would have sucked had you decided to go somewhere else.
Furious. Because I had it
You
all
know,
figured
and
out. I was just going to draw it. I even had a spot. It was actually in a Walmart parking lot
oh
in,
yeah.
where was it? I can't remember the name of the town now, in Missouri. It was going to be like a 6.5 hour drive for me. Drive out there, sit up that little, basically just take that thing and plunk it down outside. And I sit in a shade tree beside it with my thing and just watch it for like the whole 6 hours or however long it took. And then just pack everything up and drive back home. But
Well,
as it
thank
turns out, when I was on the show with a friend of mine, I knew it was going to be cloudy, so that's when I just ditched it. And then I
mm,
went on online with another friend where we were talking about it while it was going on. And one of the places that the news channel that we had on where they were showing their footage was that town that I was supposed to drive to, and there were clouds all through it. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't go. I would have been screaming if I'd driven all that way and had nothing but clouds.
well, no doubt. And I mean, look at the amazing capture you got from your own home. So that's awesome.
To be fair, I did have like really light high clouds. That's why, like when I was playing the video, it seemed to like flicker a little bit. That's
Yeah.
from just little bits of clouds just streaming by every once in a while. Because that whole thing was 6 hours, 7 hours. I don't remember exactly that
Oh,
whole thing.
wow.
So that's I just compressed it down to there because
Yep.
you're not gonna sit there and watch that
Yes,
long.
6 hours.
Okay, moved just a little bit. That's a long time.
There's some people who might.
And somebody may. I don't know. It wasn't going to be me. I'm not going to, I'm going to take this entire file and squash it into a quick, however long
Yeah.
that was, 10-second, 15-second thing.
What an amazing capture, though. I mean, Now, did you get a lunar eclipse too, Enzo?
I didn't capture one. I've seen them before. Lunar eclipses are a little, for me, they're kind of disappointing because it's not as dramatic like a solar
True.
eclipse where you can really see that defined thing. For a lunar eclipse, it just seems like it just gets really dark. There's not like that defined edge moving like you see with a
You're right.
solar eclipse. It just gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and then it's really dark. It actually does turn like a almost a blood red kind of color when it's at full totality and it falls
Yeah,
into the
I've
shadow of
seen
the earth.
that once. And it was, I mean, it was amazing to watch because, again, it was a one time, never seen it before. And you see the color changing and it was really cool. But you're right. It's so different than seeing it the other way around with the sun as well. Okay. And now Giselle's saying they wouldn't let the kids go out, obviously. See it with special glasses. Looked a tad bit darker with the glasses. Yeah, that would be something for sure. Oh, there you go. They look
Ready
like
for
3D.
2044.
It's good to be prepared. My adult son and family used the colander with white paper trick to
Yep. That,
experiment.
that works very well.
Was fun. Saw the shadow, took pictures of that, which is cool. And I mean, it's awesome that people are interested and have a lot of creative ways to be able to experience it, right? Not like some who just go out and can't see now. Gotta love it. But here's another question with Roz the ranch, and you're right. I mean, I believe it's pronounced Ute. It's UTE, the one
Yes.
tribe, and then the Navajo as well. And yeah, their stuff goes back generations. So there's certainly something to it. Now, here's the funny thing. In Hunt for Skinwalker, they did talk about this massive wolf and other things and lights and whatnot. But it wasn't until the book about the Pentagon where they talked about the hitchhiker. And that was some
That
really out there stuff.
that was my biggest takeaway from that book was because I had heard about it,
Yeah.
before the book, reading the book, but I didn't realize the distances involved. I thought, these scientist types were living somewhere nearby off of the ranch and would just basically driving into work
Hmm.
at the ranch for all day and then driving back to some apartment or house where they were renting or something like that
Yep.
afterwards somewhere nearby. But that's not the case at all. Basically, what the hitchhiker effect is, if you go to a place that seems to have, the whole umbrella of paranormal, that's your UFOs, that's your cryptids, that's your ghosts, and then you see it, you experience something, and then you go back
Hmm.
home. Those things start popping up in your home now. They've followed you, is what the reference is. And what I didn't realize until doing, because I actually listened to the book on tape or
Hmm.
recording as I was driving cross country a couple years ago. What I didn't realize is these people that had this experience were spending like a few days in, basically like 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at Utah out at Skinwalker
Hmm.
Ranch. Then they were flying home to Virginia, like just outside of Washington, D.C.,
Yep.
for Saturday and Sunday. And then they'd fly back like Sunday night to go back to Skinwalker. They're spending the weekend at home. They were experiencing stuff in Virginia where
Hmm.
there was poltergeist type activity, uh, full body apparitions, weird stuff like that. You know, basically, it would fall under the Skinwalker legend stuff, where
Mm.
you've got a creepy looking guy in the backyard that has like a wolf's head, kind of a thing,
Yep.
and things like that. Where these things were showing up at their house and they're freaking out. It's like, my family lives here. I don't want to bring this crap home. And that again goes back to, they often warn you, like on the TV show, like if you went there, well, if you were allowed entrance to Skinwalker Ranch, you do have to sign a document that says they're not responsible for anything that happens to you while you're there or after you leave. Because like when they were going into the theory, like, is there something, people are hallucinating these things? That's why they were thinking that, are they spreading this to other people? Because it wasn't just the people that were at the ranch. They would go home. It's like their spouse and their kids were also seeing these things. So it's not like it was just them.
Exactly. And then there's the medical side effects as well. A number of partners of, like, it wasn't the scientists, it wasn't the people who were at the ranch. And that's what I find, like, I'm thinking there's something under there, whether it's a toxic dump. And this is what irritates me, why they didn't talk to the original owners, because there's some reason those people left for 7 years after having owned that property since the 1940s. There's something that they know that
With
isn't
the
part.
specific instructions of, if you're going to dig, call us first.
Right.
Basically,
and that was,
they know there's something going on, but as long as you're not going to be digging, we're going to keep that to ourselves. So that way you won't try and back out of the deal of buying this paranormal carnival place.
yeah. And that was the thing, because that was written in the deal with the Gormans. So they knew there was something there, but it goes beyond that because of all the oral traditions. There's so much more to it than whatever this don't dig deal is. Then you've got this hitchhiker thing, which, like I say, for all the other stuff they talked about in the first book from 2005, they didn't say anything about the hitchhiker. There wasn't a peep about anything off the ranch. That came up in the 2021 book, and it did mention that Kelleher did have some episodes as well, but there really wasn't much explanation. This dealt more with, I can't think of the agency's names. I think one was called Axelrod or something. There were 3 other people, and it talked about their homes and what happened with their families, and then autoimmune diseases and other medical stuff, which now makes me wonder, because they really didn't talk about Rendlesham Forest, but there's a big bugaboo there with Burroughs and books here, Burroughs and Peniston, trying to get their medical records because of medical stuff going on with them, but it doesn't specify in the book what those issues are. Like, they don't know if they were exposed to radiation through that incident, because the one guy actually touched the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I mean, really, you could spend a lifetime every day, 10 hours a day, trying to piece all this stuff together and still be no closer to some of the truth.
Yeah, as far as those guys like trying to get their medical records and stuff, basically what it boils down to, and this would be the same for even if there wasn't a UFO involved. If someone that was, I'm prior military, if 30 years after I retire, I get a clean bill of health when I retire, because that's actually one of the last things that happens to you before you retire is you get a full physical, and sign off saying, yes, you're good to go. And you retire. And then 30 years later, I have just riddled with some kind of crazy cancer or something like that. Well, it's because that time I was working in the fuel cell and got exposed to this special fuel or whatever. That must be what it is. So then they would have to go back and it's like, okay, was this person actually exposed to this stuff? Were they even at that place at that time when that substance was used, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
like any kind of insurance kind of a payout, the government is no different. They're going to give you a lot of hassle. They're not going to want to have to suddenly have to pay all of your medical bills for something that may or may not have happened under their watch. Is really what
Okay.
it boils down to. As awful as it sounds, that's what it is.
But you've actually brought up a good point. And again, this is the advantage because, like you say, you're retired military, so you know this stuff. So prior to, because both of these individuals are retired USAF, so they would have had to have had a physical before they retired, Enzo?
That's how it was for everyone I've ever known that's retired. I mean, I don't know if that, and I was doing like a 20-year retirement. I don't think it's any different if you sign up for 4 years, you do your 4 years, then you just get out. I would think for that same reason, they want to
Yeah.
make sure, yes, you're healthy, nothing happened to you while you were in, that you're much later in life going to say, hey,
Right.
it's because I was exposed to that paint or on that aircraft that time that this accident happened or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So there is a level of responsibility that they would have to show for that, because that kind of stuff needs to be in your medical records if you were to.
Hmm.
Which if that's and they gave me a full copy of my medical records when I retired, both a physical printed out folder and a
Yeah.
CD that had all the digital and all the same information in a digital format. I
Right.
retired. Now I don't know the particulars on those guys, and it was well before I retired, because I think they both left out in the 80s, I think.
Um, I one might have been in the 90s.
Yeah, I don't
I
remember
can't
exactly for
exactly
those guys.
remember, but I know it was a while ago. And I mean, again, because that's what I found really confusing. And I mean, you're right. If it's they passed or they had the medical, and then retired and things were fine, and now they're trying to say that it's based on whatever may or may not have happened at Rendlesham. But I am surprised then if you received your medical file, why they wouldn't have received theirs as well.
I would think that they should have, because even if you signed up for 4 years and then you got out after that, that's still 4 years of your life you were under a physician's care that was in the
Yeah,
military, that you would need to pass that on to whoever your next family doctor is, so that they
exactly.
know what your medical history is. Just that alone, I would think that they would do that.
Yeah, that would, to me, that would make sense as well. So that's one thing I find a bit bizarre about the stuff with Rendlesham. And like I say, I mean, I don't have military experience. So as I read some of it, I can just go by the way they're describing it, right? Because I don't know what the procedures are. And even those change over time, like you say. So maybe from when they left compared to when you left, there was a different way of doing things. But I would think that medically, they would have to give them something because, like you say, you're going to be switching then to a civilian doctor. They need to know what your background is, right?
Right.
So,
Now,
yeah,
I'm like 99.9% sure that those two dudes, it's not anywhere in their medical records that one of them went up and touched an alien spacecraft, uh, and
yeah,
received the download and started writing zeros and ones in your notebook, and then have it
yeah,
all translated many years later to be a message from the future. I'm sure that wasn't anywhere in their records.
yeah. And that's the thing. And so it does tend to make you wonder. You got Giselle camp all year long in New England, hoping to run across something. And yeah, see, that's it. Is you got
Careful
to
what you
be
wish
out.
for.
You got to be out, and yeah, well, that too. Hello, Jessica. Welcome.
Yeah, he's a member of the team there, Jessica.
Oh, nice. Think they'd forward your medical record on your next doctor request. Exactly.
Right.
HIPAA's probably changed. Yeah, and that's the one thing. Like I
Yeah.
say, there's a lot of things that I don't know in terms of American government or military. So when you're reading some of this, it's kind of helpful. That's why I enjoyed the UFO Myths, Conspiracy, and Realities by John B. Alexander, because it so clearly lays it out of, it's not just you go to one agency, you make a request, and bada boom, bada bing, you got, $22 million, what have you. There's layers and layers and layers. And the other, and he points it out, and I think it came up in a couple of the other books too, is realistically, when governments are making decisions, UFOs aren't on their top priority list, right? They're looking at trying to feed people and deal with housing and dealing with unemployment and da 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 da. There's a lot of other responsibilities. And again, I think people tend to forget that. And I know when we mentioned the Black Vault, and I can't think of the individual who started that right now. He's mentioned in
John
They're Already
Greenwald
Here.
is John Greenwald is the guy that runs that.
Thank you. The one thing I do remember about him is he put in 9,000 Freedom of Information Act requests. Now, I get it. He was doing it to put out the website and get information out there. But the flip side to that is somebody in that, whichever agency he was sending them to, how many frickin' work hours did it take someone to find all of that, photocopy it, send it out? I mean, he just basically gave 2 or 3 or more people full-time jobs just on his requests. That's not all the other requests they get
from regular people. I get what you're saying, but under the letter of the law, that is something that they are responsible for. If they need to up the manning in that FOIA department to keep up with the load, then that's what they have to do, because that's still the letter of the law that, every single person in the United States can send in a FOIA request for something. There is a trick to it, which I've learned. Everything I know about it is from John Greenwald, because he's like the expert on all the little tricks and all the little ways that they try and slip up and basically try to get out of doing work.
Yeah.
There is no reference to ATIP under the Pentagon, because you can't just say, send me all your UFO stuff. you can't. That's not how it works. You have to be very specific about, and they will stick to the specifics of, even if you might misspelled somebody's name or an office symbol or something like, sorry, that person doesn't exist, or that office doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Throw it away. Because they are very specific as well on how their response is. And if you don't act, it's like a genie thing. If you don't word it just right, you're going to get a messed up wish granted to you. But but John knows all of that stuff. And he must send out a dozen every single day. It seems he sends out a lot, and he has certainly gotten some good stuff, like especially from back like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He gets a lot of good stuff out of that. There's ways around things that they're doing now, like if, say, there was a crash retrieval program that found a UFO and the military people went out and grabbed it, they would immediately probably turn that over to some other company like Boeing or Raytheon or something like that, because they don't have to do any kind of FOIA stuff. They are not the government. They are independent contractors in that respect. So they don't have to do anything. They don't fall into that. So,
and I've read, it was in one of the books recently, it might have even been Skinwalker at the Pentagon, that more and more, that's exactly what's happening, is the military are handing this out to private companies precisely because they don't fall under that. And I see Diane has, I may have missed it in the intro, talking about books. Have you ever written any? If not, what are a few of your favorites within this topic?
I've certainly not written any books. I've probably eaten more books than I would ever write. But we were actually talking just before the show. There's a book that I recently picked up after seeing these guys in an interview. Nightcrawler, Eye in the Sky. What this is these two gentlemen here at the bottom, John and Gerald Tedesco, are engineers, and they live out in Long Island, New York. And there had gotten like UFO reports out over the water of Long Island. And like, there's got to be some way to track these things or see them or something. So they started using their engineering wits and built their own radar system. And I did look up other avenues of it on YouTube. There are YouTube videos that show you how to build your own radar system. You've got to have some technical knowledge on how to do it, but it's certainly laid out there where you could do that kind of thing. And using their homemade radar and even some off-the-shelf marine grade radar, like the ones that would go on boats. That's actually what one of the things is. They basically hooked all this stuff up to this old RV they had. And actually, this little dish thing you see here, that's actually an RV radar.
Wow.
Some of the stuff back here on the back is their homemade stuff, and various other radar, radio, and they actually have a weather vane thing and all that other stuff in there. They have a lot of tech that they packed into the roof of this RV. They went out looking for them. They found them. As odd as it sounds, but their big breakthrough, because with their homemade radar, they were seeing reflections coming back. There was something physical out there over the water, like 3 to 5 miles out. But they couldn't see anything. They'd be out there with binoculars and the whole thing, and they couldn't visibly see it. Like, well, maybe if we used night vision. So they use regular night vision. Has it enhances what light is already there and goes a little bit like into the infrared spectrum, but not a lot. You always see the guys on TV, they put the goggles on, it's all green.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. They could sort of see something, but not really. So they went a little bit further and bought some actual thermal imagery, like a FLIR system that's forward-looking infrared. And then they saw basically like large triangle type craft just kind of hovering out there, several miles out over the ocean. Not sure what they're doing, but they started taking a billion pictures, and they're trying to see if there was a pattern, the way they moved, or what nights they would see them, all of these things. They're almost like wildlife photographers at that point, trying to figure it out. And there was one particular night where there was one that was actually relatively close, like under like a half a mile from the beach itself that they were on. Like, oh, this thing's close enough. Maybe we can maybe signal it or, flash something at it or see if we get any kind of response. Cause usually it's miles and miles out.
Right.
So they, and again, these were engineers. It was That UFO podcast is where I saw the interview with these guys. True engineers. They did not sugarcoat any of the technical language at all for the viewer. They used the full names of everything and exactly what they were. It's like, yeah, we used this thermal imagery, designator. It's a laser. It's a laser that works in the infrared spectrum. So you can't see it with your eyes, but if you have on like night vision goggles or any kind of infrared type gear, you would certainly see it. Just like a regular, pen laser. Well, they painted it with one of those lasers, and they said it moved slightly closer. And then they said it because they both had infrared goggle kind of gear set up. They didn't on the show. They didn't get into the particulars of what they had. One brother had like the good set, and the other brother had kind of the crappier set. But they're still expensive no matter what you do. And he said this triangle thing. They said it was like a projector or a spotlight, but it was square that it shined down onto the water, and then it swept up onto the beach towards them. And now, the one brother that had the really good set could clearly see what it was doing. And he said after this square beam thing got over to where they were, his feet started getting numb. Then his knees started getting numb. Then his upper legs started. He fell down into the sand. He couldn't stand up anymore. His legs were completely numb, and he's
Wow.
yelling at his brothers like, I can't get up. Get me out of this. So his brother runs over there, and again running into that same little beam area.
Yeah.
His feet started getting numb, and then his knees got numb, then and he's fallen down. Now they're both crawling like this to get out of whatever this little area of effect is around them. And they did
Wow.
have there's a third person, get her name right, Donna Nardo in the book, that also helped him. She was in the RV where she was basically the brothers built most of the stuff, and she monitored all the equipment on the inside.
Right.
Yep. And she sees the boys are in trouble, so she runs out and they're like, don't come over here, you're gonna fall in the same stuff. We're almost out of it. And they had to go through the sand on their bellies to get out of it. And then they started getting the feeling their legs back, and as soon as they were able to stand, they ran out of there. They jumped in the RV and blasted out of there like a Scooby-Doo cartoon,
No
because they had,
kidding.
I don't want nothing more to do with that. So, and of course, there's more to the story, but that's just what they mentioned on the interview. But it is in
Yeah.
this book, which I'm certainly going to check this out, because I certainly want to see what kind of tech they were using. I want to put it on my vehicle and do the same thing and learn from the lessons of painting them and getting them angry and making you collapse on the beach.
Well, yeah, and so it makes you so obviously there was something there, because you can't hallucinate
Right.
that kind of thing, right? And it obviously wasn't visual. I mean, there was something projected to a bit of that location, and trying to think of, and he's disappeared. He used to be a YouTuber, and I don't think it was going around Area 51, but there was some location that he had found. It was either like, one of these underground type of things, whatever. And there were different sensations that he had as well. And they were talking about, I don't, it's always frustrating because there's just so many examples and names and things, and I can't remember which channel I saw it on, but it was talking about getting that tingly feeling and stuff. And they were whoever did the video was mentioning that there I don't think they're pulse generators. I don't think that's the right term, but there's some kind of thing, and it lets you know to stay out of the perimeter of somewhere. I'm guessing military developed. And I don't know what this tunnel or whatever it was this guy had come across, but like I say, sadly, not long after, he was not heard from again. So what happened to him is, I don't know. There's like
Was
some
this the guy that
weird
he would go
stuff.
out? Was this the guy that was out in the deserts around like where Area 51 was? And
Possibly.
this story sounds familiar. I know I've seen somebody talk about him before.
Now,
Maybe it
is
was
it
the Y
legit or?
Files. I don't know. I'm trying to remember what the source was that I saw the video on the guy and how he just kind of like randomly, mysteriously disappeared. Had
Mhm.
tons of experience wandering around out in the desert for weeks at a time.
It's the
Like
same guy.
pro level backpacker. He'd sleep out there. He had the water. He'd do all the survival stuff, all that stuff to survive out in that desert. With the exception of him like falling down somewhere and getting hurt and not being able to, get water or food or something like that. He, passed away out in the desert someplace. That'd be about the only thing.
Mm.
Unless somebody else came out there when he got too close to something he wasn't supposed to be and snagged him.
And I mean, that's kind of the thing. But we're thinking of the same person, and I can't remember, like I say, where I came across it or his name or the story. But yeah, it was one of those, because he was talking, I'm pretty sure it was him that was talking about the different sensations and the tingles. And I mean, with
he,
these guys,
he found a cave or something like that where he
yeah,
had dude, I've heard this story. Who was this guy?
yeah, and I can't remember, like I say, where I came across it about that. So Diane says, thank you for the suggestion, Enzo. And then we've got a oh no with probably
It's
some,
for
oh, the tingly legs.
oh
Different kind of quicksand.
Kenny Veach, Veach, was a 47-year-old hiker and YouTuber who vanished in 2014 after
Mm.
exploring a strange cave near Area 51.
So it was Area 51.
Yeah, this is the
Hmm.
guy that I'm thinking of. Kenny Veach, Veach. I think there was some stuff where he may have. There's one theory that he may have himself disappeared himself because he had some problems at home with his wife, I think, and maybe some
Mm.
financial issues where he may have just gone total off grid or, self deleted
Yeah.
out in the desert someplace.
Oy. Um, yep. The
Yep.
correct spelling there, Diane. Yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking of. And I mean, the sad thing is, too, that's come up with a few different things. There's, I can't remember which one it was, but there was someone who had been doing presentations and things. And, turns out they had a lot of mental health issues and other things going on. But they'd been doing presentations all over the US and so many other things. So people are, of course, listening to them and they're going on about the aliens that they were involved with and this and that. And I mean, it really is such a challenging field, to say the least, because some of these people who are talking, they're sincere. They truly believe what they're saying. The problem is there's some other issues there. Then you have
Right.
other
Right.
people who are researching and trying to get factual information out there, and some of them are being heard. And then you have some who just want to run with the conspiracy theories because, well, if you don't have all the answers, there's got to be some shady stuff going on, type of thing. So the one comment too, I think it was John B. Alexander, is you're never going to make people happy, because if you don't release what they want that's going to tie in with their beliefs, you're covering it up. And even if you release everything that's there, like France and Britain have done, and it's still not changing much of anything because there was nothing there to release. Or so they say. It's just one of those huge things. But Enzo, I see we're getting on to five. Well, it's 5 o'clock here.
Yep.
We've
Rolling
been
on
chatting
almost 2 hours.
two hours.
Easy to do.
It is. I mean, it's such a complex subject, and there's so many different things to delve into and track down. I certainly appreciate your time of coming to chat and share. So I guess I should say, is there anything else you'd like to include? A channel shout out, books, where you're going to be?
I think we covered all that. I know. Well, geez, I didn't even think about that. I forgot to pull up. Give me a second here.
No
'Cause
worries.
I will be speaking at our local. I say local, Katy, Kansas Paracon, and if I
Nice.
can pull up the actual flyer for it, I can actually give you legitimate details instead of mumbling and acting foolish like I am right now.
No, you're
Oh,
not.
quick.
And you do that stuff way quicker than I do. So kudos to you.
Let me get this, do this. I will share screen.
Here we go.
The 2024 Border Town Paracon. If you happen to be in and around Caney, Kansas on the September 28th, you can swing on by. It's a full day of events where we have 3 primary panels where it'll be a cryptid / Bigfoot panel, a ghost panel, and a UFO panel. We have
Wow.
about 40 guest speakers, all kind of experts in their field from all over Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri that all come to this. And it is absolutely free. You can
Sweet. Wish I could travel.
I know there's door prizes there. We've got folks from all over coming in. It's a good time. I went to the one last year. It was my first time, and it was a lot of fun. And my favorite part of going to any kind of like a meetup thing like this isn't talking to people in the front of the room. It's talking to people like behind the scenes, like during the
Yeah.
breaks or like out in the smoking area or something like that, where it's just regular people and it's just us. And
Yeah.
because everybody that shows up to this, they've experienced something, and that's why they're there, is to get answers. And they will talk to you about it. And I love every second of it.
Yeah, no doubt. Because, like you say, it's, the audience that's coming is there to share, get answers. And I think that's the thing that people miss sometimes. And I mean, for myself, and because mine's more the paranormal, UFOs, I'm kind of interested, but not as deep dived as I have the paranormal. I've had an experience, it's mine. I'm looking for answers. What the hell was it? What makes this kind of thing happen? So when I'm watching some of the paranormal channels, which I rarely do now, but when I did, I wasn't so much looking for what will they capture as what is this thing? And then I began to realize I'm not going to figure that out watching people stumbling around a different house every other week. It's got to be a much more in depth, one location over years. Because unless you know the house, you don't know the sounds, the settles, and you're going at night and you're going to get rattled and you're already got the adrenaline rush. Now, the only channel that I've seen that have explained, and you touched on this a bit ago, Enzo, is a lot of the stuff happens at night versus the daytime. And like I say, I've only come across it in one book. It was by Joshua Warren, Ghost Hunters. And his theory is that because we're faced away from the sun, it's that electromagnetic field, whether that's what generates it or makes it more accessible, whatever. I mean, again, all this stuff is theory, right? Who knows? Because some things happen in the daytime. There's, yeah, we could spend days talking about this. And everyone is saying that they've really enjoyed. We've got Giselle, had an Aaron. Glad you're still here. That was
Still
awesome.
talking.
Thank you. Yeah. Fascinating listen. That's the freebie advertisement. Fantastic job. So now,
Jessica's kind of my boss as far as our little group in Bordertown Paranormal. She's actually the star of that Paracon. She's the one that kind of puts it all together and runs the whole thing. And can I help you do something? It's like, no, I got it. And it's like, all right, I'm here if you need me to do something, though. No, it's.
Awesome.
But she does a great job down there, and it's kind of our face of the group, kind of a thing. She's our representation normally when we go out to places. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's coming up end of September. If you're down in the States, check it out. A lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like a great time. And Jessica says, you work well under pressure. Like I say, you find that stuff way quicker than I do. And you do so much. Here we go. First, Diane did great. Giselle could listen. Sure could. It's interesting. I agree. It would definitely, we could go on. And we didn't even get to Rubio and his 2021 report.
Nope. That's fine.
Well, Enzo and everyone listening, thank you so much for your time. Enzo, thank you so much for sharing the different clips and all the information. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, no problem. All right. So, everyone, have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And we're going to call that a wrap. It always makes me laugh because I hit the end stream and then it takes a while. So I just wave for a bit and say bye-bye. Thanks so much to everyone.